Hi everybody, I'm Dr. John Douillard and welcome to LifeSpa.com, and today I want to talk about how women recover from pregnancy. I've been in practice for almost 40 years and I've seen an inordinate number of women who come to me, 5, 10, 15, 20. Even recently I had a patient that came 30 years after her babies and she told me she had never been the same since having her babies. And this is something that Ayurveda talked about thousands of years ago, how important it was to recover properly from having your child. Ayurveda said that having a baby and delivering a baby can be one of the most rejuvenating experiences of a woman's life, literally transforming every single cell. Or it can be one of the most debilitating experiences in a woman's life. And I'm sad to say that I see that happen more on the debilitating side more than on the transformative side. And there's a lot we can do to kind of understand why that might happen. Women experience kind of tiredness and fatigue and even moodiness and anxiety that just never goes away. Their digestion oftentimes is never quite the same. Their elimination, bowel function seems to be off. And a host of problems stem from that, including over time issues with breathing and sleep. And I want to share with you in this video of how all these things are connected and how critically important it is to understand how they're connected and how you can troubleshoot which weak link you might have and then troubleshoot and fix that. So I might point you to different articles at lifespa.com to go to for more information, but here is how it works. When you deliver a baby, Ayurveda talks about prana or life force. There's one that goes up called prana, one that goes down to deliver the baby called apana. When you deliver a baby, the life force is forced, down, and it can blow out the digestive fire. It also can deplete you. So when all that energy that's normally in your brain goes down for delivering the baby, it can leave nobody home upstairs, leave you tired, depressed, lethargic, and sometimes women never recover from that. And that's really important to pay back that exhaustive debt. I've written some articles about pregnancy and postpartum repair, but you want to turn on the digestive fire. Kindle the digestive fire back on. You don't want to be eating heavy steak dinners right away. You want to take time to eat gentle, easy to digest, cooked food, preferably mostly vegetarian. If you're a meat eater, a little bit is okay, but not a ton, because you want to give the body a chance to rekindle that digestive fire the best it can. Herbs like warm digester, gentle digester, herbs that I use a lot, which are just, gentle digesters, ginger, cumin, coriander, fennel, cardamom, easy to digest spices that support healthy digestive function. When after delivery, there's herbs, Ayurveda calls them ojas building herbs, that rebuild and rejuvenate the reserves. One called shatavari means a woman with 100 husbands, which you can only imagine what that would be like. But point being is that it's deeply rejuvenative for the reproductive system postpartum. Ashwagandha herb translated means the strength of 10 horses, suggests that we want to really pay back and rebuild some of the deep exhaustive stress. But those things aren't the real cause of why women say things like, I've never been the same, I've never fully recovered from my pregnancies. This is what I hear way too often. And a baby, as moms know, right, they take up a lot of space. And when they get in the last second or third trimester, the baby pushes up against the stomach and the stomach pushes up against the diaphragm. The stomach and diaphragm are touching anyway. They're anatomically next to each other. So when you put pressure on the stomach and push it up against the diaphragm, the stomach can actually adhere to the diaphragm. And over time, it can literally even herniate through the diaphragm, doing something very severe called a hiatal hernia. One study from Johns Hopkins reported that, this is a crazy study, 50% of people over 60 have a hiatal hernia, which means that, think about this for a second, your stomach is supposed to hang from your diaphragm. But in this situation, the stomach is not only not hanging from your diaphragm, it's pushing up against the diaphragm with such pressure, it literally herniates through the esophageal sphincter, which is one of the strongest muscles in your body. So you got to ask yourself the question, how long has it been putting that kind of pressure on the diaphragm compromising diaphragmatic function, number one, and also compromising the function of the stomach, number two. Both of these things will take you out. Maybe not right away, but years to follow. Absolutely critically important function. Your diaphragm, the major muscle of inspiration, and your stomach, obviously, your major muscle of or organ of digestion, right? So when the stomach gets pushed up against that diaphragm, it can stop the function of the diaphragm and stop the function of the stomach and herniate through. In 20% of women with pregnancy, they have this problem. They literally have a hiatal hernia, according to Johns Hopkins. So this is a really common thing. This is not something I'm just making up. Ayurveda called this thousands of years ago udvarta, upward moving digestion, when everything gets pushed up. And after you deliver the baby, a lot of times the stomach doesn't come down. This is usually aggravated by other underlying digestive issues, like poor liver function, poor bile flow, which is called bile sludge, which is a kind of a subclinical term, which means a lot of folks have it, but they don't get diagnosed with it. But it causes sluggishness in the bile flow. The bile is a buffer for the acid in your stomach. So your stomach will say, hey, I just ate a ham sandwich. I need X amount of bile to neutralize the fat in the ham and buffer the acid I'm going to need to break down the protein and the gluten in the bread. And if the liver is congested with bile sludge, it may not deliver as much bile as you need. And the stomach will then make the decision to hold on to the food and wait for the green light to go on so the stomach can empty its contents. If the liver is congested, that can cause the stomach to hold on to the food longer than it should, creating more upward moving pressure of the stomach contents onto the diaphragm. And then you have a baby on top of that, and now you have real problems, which can kind of compound these issues. Now, the diaphragm can't really function anywhere near as well as it could. Your bile flow is also the number one mover of your bowels. So if you don't have good bowel movements, it's a good chance the upstream cause of that is lack of good bile flow, and that's caused by processed food, cooked vegetable oils, all the stuff that they fed us for the last 4 decades, since the 1960s. What is that now? 6 decades. That's what we've been fed. And those oils are indigestible. You put them in a loaf of bread, the bread never gets hard. You put it inside your body, the bugs won't eat that oil, even though they actually eat oil, not that oil, because it's highly processed. All that undigestible oil goes to your liver, causes bile sludge. The number one elective abdominal surgery in America today is gallbladder removal surgery, right? So this is a really big deal. So if you have issues there, lots of folks do, and indigestion, heartburn, gas reflux, which a lot of folks do, then that puts pressure on the diaphragm. So getting that fixed up is really important. So let's talk about, it's a lot here, and I understand that. But it's so important because I see so many women. I recently saw a woman who came, and she said, after my babies, 30 years ago, she'd never been the same. She was an athlete. She's now complaining of shortness of breath, fatigue, tiredness, exhaustion, moodiness, acid reflux. All the things that I'm talking about are reversible if you understand the upstream cause, which Ayurveda addressed thousands of years ago, which is so critically important. All right, so I've written a ton of articles on how to reboot digestion, and I'm not going to go over that today. I have a digestive troubleshooting your digestion ebook. Go to lifespa.com, go to the Learn tab, click on our free ebook library, and you'll get to the digestive ebook, and it'll help you troubleshoot your whole digestive system. I also wrote all about that in my book, Eat Wheat, which tells you how to troubleshoot why you can't eat wheat, as opposed to just taking the wheat out of your diet, actually trying to fix the problem. Because these problems don't go away. You can't just take the food out of your diet and think you solved the problem. You just stop eating the problematic food. But you still have there's still a reason why you didn't digest that food. And that, swept under the rug, can cause long-standing digestive problems that really become problematic. So check out that ebook. When those undigested foods go into your small intestine, they will clog up your lymphatic system. They're too big to get into your blood. They end up in your lymph around your belly. They can bloat around your belly. They create extra weight around your belly, and they cause lymphatic congestion, which can cause skin rashes, can cause congestion, tiredness, and lethargy because your body is trying to use the lymph as a delivery system for fat as fuel, and it's a carrier of your immune system. So obviously you can get immune compromise as well, right? So lots and lots of dots here connect, which is why it's so insidious where women say, ever since my pregnancy I had this. Another woman says, ever since my pregnancy I had that. It doesn't always be the same thing for everybody. Everybody's genetically wired to break down in their own unique way, right? So we got to fix the underlying upstream cause. So making sure I have a whole Miracle of Lymphatic ebook for free. If you have lymph concerns like tiredness and lethargy and rashes and bloating and swelling and ankle swelling or rings getting tight on your fingers, headaches and migraines, these are lymph conditions, drains being clogged, read that ebook, which is really important. But the thing that probably is the most kind of unsung or not discussed at all is the impact of the pregnancy pushing up on the diaphragm and then the stomach getting stuck to the diaphragm and never ever going away. And therefore the diaphragm, when it contracts, is not able to contract fully because it's got a big old stomach in the way. And I wrote an article called Stomach Pulling, which is a really simple technique where you actually take your thumbs and you take it and you put it underneath your rib cage and you pull down on your stomach and you breathe in and arch and pull down on your stomach. So as your rib cage is going up and back, you're pulling down on your stomach and you're sort of separating the rib cage from the diaphragm and the stomach and really opening that up. Read that article, watch that video. It's called Stomach Pulling. I'm also a really big fan of using a vibrating massaging device of some sort. I use a vibrating roller that we have. You can look them up on my website. It's called the Viper, and this thing is like a big roller that you use for your legs and back, but I put it right on my abdomen, turn it on, and I lie on it, and I do a visceral massage with that. It's just phenomenal to keep those upper digestive organs really healthy because the little tiny bile ducts are tiny and they can get bile sludge in there and then you don't produce enough bile and your stomach eventually says, well, if they ain't making the bile, I'm not going to make the acid, so therefore we're not going to eat or digest a lot of foods very well, and he or she will figure out what they can and can't eat. And wheat and dairy and nuts and seeds, legumes, I can't eat those, so I stop eating them. And then you go down the road of trying to find a new diet that somehow you can digest, which is like, Russian roulette for a lot of folks. I treat that every single day, and it's a real challenge for them. But when the diaphragm isn't contracting well because of the stomach, well, now you have an issue with how you breathe. And this is what this woman talked to me about a couple of weeks ago, which made me finally want to write this article and finally want to talk about this because it's such a big deal and I see it so often. I actually want to write a book about this. My publisher didn't think it was a good idea. I still think this is one of those things that women don't talk about. Like the woman I'm talking about who was just recent, she just endured the symptoms for decades. She just never told anybody. She dealt with her digestive problems, changed her diet, was fatigued and tired, but just pushed through. This is what a lot of women do because they don't know what, you go to the doctor and they go, there's nothing wrong with you. And because they don't understand the subtleties of how all the dots connect, of how your diaphragm affects your digestion and how your upper digestion affects your elimination and how your elimination affects your lymphatic system and how your lymphatic system is in your brain and it drains 3 pounds of plaque out of your head every year. And if that's not draining well, then you're going to have brain lymphatic or what's called lymphatic congestion, which is linked now in the science and the journals to anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, inflammation, infection, and even autoimmune concerns. So it all connects. And what we need to do, and what I try to do with my patients, is try to help them understand how it all connects and what part of the chain broke for you and how we can fix that. It's so important, and it just hurts me to see so many women suffering from what Ayurveda says should be the most rejuvenating and transformational experience in their life to becoming something so challenging for them for decades. So the diaphragm can't contract anymore because the stomach is stuck to it. So you have to do the stomach pulling technique. There's also a breathing technique called pratiloma. In Western medicine, it's called inspiratory muscle training, used in every single hospital in the world. And secretly, in the medical journals, at least 15 studies show that it reverses the hiatal hernia, the GERD, the reflux, the acid, the acidity in your stomach. Because the gastroparesis, the food is lingering in your stomach too long, partly because it's stuck to the diaphragm and it can't really function the way it was designed. And then that in conjunction with the poor bile flow is like the perfect storm for a host of intolerances, food intolerances, and forms of indigestion, gas, bloating, extra weight, holding on to water, fatigue, moodiness, anxiety. It all connects. So the diaphragm, unfortunately, is a major pump for the entire lymphatic system. All the lymph in your belly, the extra weight around your belly, is pumped out via your lymphatic system. Women with breast cancer showed to have significant increase of congestion of the anterior diaphragmatic lymph nodes. They're all connected. And the diaphragm, when you don't have a diaphragm breathing and contracting fully, and in one study, elite athletes, only half of them had a diaphragm that was working fully and relaxing fully, and therefore they don't have it, probably you and I don't have it, so we need to do exercises for our diaphragm. And then if you add sitting, which is a new phenomenon in the world, with chairs are a relatively recent invention, and we sit, we slouch, and the rib cage gets jammed into the diaphragm, pushes it into a pre-contracted position, and we sit in the car, in the front of the computer, on the couch, we sit. We exercise, do yoga here or there, but for the most of the day, we find ourselves sitting. And that causes real problems in the diaphragm's ability to contract. So the rib cage has something called the elastic recoil. It always wants to exhale, squeeze the air out. And the only reason it opens up is when your diaphragm contraction forces it to open up. The diaphragm sucks the air in and the balloon expands. As soon as the diaphragm relaxes, the exhale happens. Your rib cage is always in exhale mode. But if the diaphragm is not working well, the rib cage will get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. You'll lose lymphatic flow, which is the major drainage system for your body, immune carrying system, and garbage can of your body. So you can't get the trash out, you can't detoxify, you can't carry your immune system in an efficient manner, and you can't deliver the fat as fuel to every cell of your body for baseline energy. All these things really matter. And and also what happens is you start to breathe more shallow. And when you breathe more shallow, you end up over breathing oxygen. This is really problematic because one study showed that 75% of the oxygen people are breathing in, they breathe right back out unused. So we keep taking in these shallow breaths and we try to jam in as much oxygen as we can, but it just won't go in because the oxygen is already saturated 98% oxygen in your blood. And as we kind of shallow breathe, we keep blowing off way more CO2 or carbon dioxide. And we have this now imbalance of CO2 and oxygen being very high, which is an anxiety-provoking molecule, CO2 being very low, which yes, we want to get rid of it, but it has to be in balance with oxygen, and it's a sedative molecule, which is why when people are anxious, they put a paper bag over their mouth, they rebreathe the CO2, and they calm down. So when you have a low oxygen and low CO2 and high oxygen because of no diaphragmatic or weak diaphragmatic function and upper chest overbreathing, you end up more anxious, right? So this is where Ayurveda talked about doing breathing techniques like pratiloma and kumbhak, breathing techniques that are designed specifically to strengthen your diaphragm. And to do breath holds so the CO2 levels are able to rise and you become a little bit more comfortable with air hunger. I've written articles called Overbreathing. I wrote an article called Breathe Away Your Heartburn. Another article called Strengthen Your Lungs Now, Pratiloma. Pratiloma is the breathing technique in Ayurveda used for thousands of years ago to strengthen your diaphragm. It's a super simple technique. You just partially close your nostrils and breathe in against that resistance. As deeply in as you possibly can. Do belly, chest, upper chest first, and then let the air out. And do 10 of those as best you can. Work your way up to 30 of those. And I have a video that shows you how to do the whole thing. So please tune into that. It's called Strengthen Your Lungs Now, Pratiloma, or the Breathe Away Your Heartburn article. They both talk about the same technique. And start to strengthen your diaphragm now. After you do 10 to 30 of those, you can then do a breath hold where you actually hold your breath on the exhalation comfortably So you do 30 breaths of that. On the last exhale, hold your breath, only what's comfortable, no turning blue. And as you hold your breath, the CO2 levels rise. As the CO2 levels rise, that's the trigger for your oxygen to release your hemoglobin to release the oxygen in your tissues. And this is the real problem, right? Most people walk around with levels of hypoxia. They walk around because they're shallow breathing. The oxygen level is over breathing. The bond between the oxygen and hemoglobin in your blood is really tight because CO2 is really, really low. You hold your breath or lengthen your breath with exercises. The CO2 levels begin to rise. That releases the oxygen from your hemoglobin, floods the tissues with oxygenation, and you deal with issues of tissue hypoxia and the risks of mutagenic stem cells that thrive in a low oxygen environment, and you change the game. You rejuvenate. And studies show when you do that, you get all types of benefits called intermittent hypoxia, which I've written about as well. Type that into my website, intermittent hypoxia, and you'll read about the stem cell benefits and the nitric oxide benefits and the hormonal benefits and changes you get when you actually learn how to hold your breath and force your body to become tolerant to a little bit more air hunger, a little bit more CO2 tolerance that will force the body to regularly, with every breath, dump oxygen into your tissues versus when you overbreathe oxygen, then the bond between hemoglobin and oxygen stays very, very tight, and you end up with tissue hypoxia, which can be very dangerous in the long run. So, in recap, moms who are pregnant, the baby pushes the stomach against the diaphragm. Diaphragmatic function begins to affect how you breathe, how you sleep, sleep apnea, snoring. All these are connected. Your mood, your energy, your brain lymphatic flow. I know this must be crazy a lot to hear all this, but because your brain lymphatic flow drains the 3 pounds of plaque out of your head every year while you sleep at night. And while you breathe, if you don't breathe properly, you don't drain properly, which is why we encourage nose breathing while you sleep, because that's what pumps the brain lymphatic flow. All these things are so important, and they all connect. And so I hope I threw enough of mud on the wall here today for you guys to figure out, okay, what part of that is broken in me? Is it my brain fog that I'm having that I want to look up brain lymphatics on my website? Is it indigestion or heartburn? Look up those techniques on my website and you'll get all the articles and videos how to fix that. Is it constipation or elimination? It's like intolerance to fatty foods, or is it my lymphatic system where I'm swelling and getting rashes or feeling incredibly tired? All these things happen. They happen inordinately with women postpartum, and sometimes they just don't go away. And so I hope you get something out of this. Like I said, I threw a lot of mud on the wall here. There's a ton of articles to back up what I said here, so please go to lifespa.com, check out those articles, just type in what you want to research, and then you'll get that info, and hopefully move the needle for you all. All right, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next week. I'm Dr. Douillard. Do you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe and share.
This recording is brought to you by LifeSpa, where ancient Ayurvedic wisdom meets modern science. Get access to free health video newsletters by Dr. John at lifespa.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.